Okay, so we talked about the atmosphere before, and now we're going to talk a little bit about air itself. The whole section is what we call air pressure. So air has mass and it also has density. Density means like how much mass is in a given volume, so how much there is to it. Sometimes air feels more dense, air feels heavier at certain times of the year than it does at other times of the year. So if you walk out sometimes in the summer, like, oh, the air is just so heavy. There's more density to it. There's more particles in the air during that time than it would be if I walk out on a winter day and it feels pretty dry out there. So density is found by taking the mass divided by the volume. Pressure is the force pushing on an area or surface. And in fact, air is pushing down on us all the time. We have the entire weight of the atmosphere pushing on our bodies constantly. So this picture is showing us, by showing us kind of that little envelope that's covering that hiker there, it's showing that the entire weight of the atmosphere is pushing down on her as she's walking there. Now, we don't notice that. There's a reason for that. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But pressure, there's constant air pressure around us. Air provides pressure because it's pushing on us. It's pushing on everything because it has mass and it has density to it. And if it has those things to it, if there's density there, then it is going to have some pressure. It's going to be pushing on stuff. So air pressure, like I said, is that weight, the column of air that's pushing on us all the time. Pushing on everything, basically. So we constantly, right now, if you were to put your hands out, like on either side of you and hold them up, you're basically holding the weight of a washing machine up in your hand, the amount of air pressure that's coming down on your hand. The reason why you don't feel like you're holding up a washing machine is because you have balanced air pressure inside of your body. So all the air pressure inside our body is balancing the pressure outside our body, which causes us not to basically be pushed down into the ground by the air itself, or not to feel that weight coming down on us all of the time. If you've ever been in a plane before and your ears have popped, if we get in higher altitude, there's less pressure up there because there's less air above us, which means that our bodies are used to a certain pressure, but if we go up to a higher altitude, we have more pressure inside our bodies than outside. So our ears pop to kind of get rid of some of that pressure inside of our bodies. And that happens with any time your ears pop, it's getting rid of some pressure. So the more pressure you have on you, if you go down into a swimming pool, sometimes you'll start to feel really heavy down in the bottom of the swimming pool. Same idea, is you're getting more pressure because not only is the air on top of you, but now the water is on top of you, that added weight. So you have more pressure, so your body starts to feel like it's about ready to explode. And that's because you have an increased air pressure and water pressure on you at that point. So the atmosphere is heavy, but it doesn't crush us because we pressure that, or we balance that pressure. These are a couple ways that pressure is measured by barometers. So if you've ever watched the weather at night, you probably have heard them talk about barometric pressure. Maybe not, but that's one of the things that's always mentioned. There's a lot. You can tell there's more liquid in the air. The pressure is higher. We're probably going to have some sort of storm or rain coming than if it's lower, because the more density, the more stuff that's in the air, the more pressure we're going to feel, or the more pressure that's going to be in our air. Okay, so as I mentioned before, going up higher is going to affect air pressure on us. So altitude, which is your elevation, the higher up you are, the less air pressure there is above you. So air pressure decreases as altitude increases. If you're climbing a mountain, if you're up in an airplane, a lot of times, they've mentioned this before with football players, those that play in Denver. Denver is like what they call the mile-high city because it's that far up in elevation. So if you're not used to playing in like what they call thinner air up there, a lot of times they'll have to take extra oxygen and things like that for players when they play in Denver. Because they're not used to the air pressure there. They need a little bit more oxygen. The air is thinner there. There's not as much oxygen getting into your body sometimes. And so your body has to adapt to that. Well, players that live in Denver and play in Denver, they're used to it. But those that come in and play against them don't necessarily have that same ability to adapt very quickly. So because you're up at a higher elevation, there's less air pressure above them, so they feel that effect. So air pressure decreases as altitude increases. So more higher up you go, the less air pressure there is above you. So as I mentioned before, the less air above you, the pressure is not as high because there aren't as many particles. If there's less air above you, that means that there's less particles above you. If you were to go to the bottom of a mountain and then you go and there's water there and you go down into the water as well, you're going to increase that pressure. So the more farther you go down, the more air pressure you're going to feel on top of you. So less particles above you as you go up, more particles above you as you go down. So if you go into some water, you're also going to notice that there's going to be an increase of pressure there as well. All right, so this is the end of section 2 in chapter 1 on air pressure. Again, this is in your packet, and it also can be found in PowerSchool Learning, so you can print it off, or you can just do it on a separate sheet of paper and send it to me, either scan it or take a picture, and you can send it to me that way, either via email, or you can post it, or upload it to PowerSchool Learning in the messages area. All right, enjoy!